introduction, but she simply inspired the world by winning the title of America's Next Top Model in 2008. She remains an all-time fan favorite and has shot spreads and landed on the covers of numerous high-profile magazines. She's also an emerging singer and songwriter and a published author, as I mentioned, about her book. And she is really committed to making a difference in the world. So that is very touching. And we will follow up with a fashion show tonight. And most of the models were telling me they're volunteering their time because they're so inspired by Naima and they really wanted to meet her and dedicate the fashion show to her. So thank you. Our next panelist, Sarah Austin. Sarah is a San Francisco native, and she is the internet's first livecaster. Sarah has made her reality TV debut in startups in Silicon Valley on November 5, 2012, and she produced the web series Party Crashes, where she crashed tech parties before being selected to livecast for the Justin TV test runs. She later went to produce Pop 17, a web series documenting internet culture. She's also a contributor on Forbes, belonging to Forbes Video Network. Thank you for being here, Sarah. Our next guest is Stephanie, and I always have trouble with your last name. So Stephanie is the owner of Stiletto Jungle Enterprises. She's also the publisher and editor of Adventures in Stiletto Jungle, a fashion and beauty shopping blog dedicated to serving recent college students. In her daytime job, she is an attorney and works as a social media manager for the web's most popular legal international site. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. And our next guest is Paul. Paul is the director of account marketing at Levi's and heads up all aspects of brand management and strategic planning for Levi's North American wholesale business, as defined by product, season, segment, and marketing mix. When he's not asking the creative agency to change the layout so it pops off the page, he develops product marketing strategies and plans that reach the consumers through multiple marketing vehicles, in-store environment, and online channels. Thank you for being here, Paul. Thank you for giving us the Levi's gift certificates. I don't really want to give them up, but some lucky winners will get them tonight. And we also have Lee Gong, VP of Product and Head of My Runway at SAP. Lee heads up My Runway at the App House, a product innovation team in SAP in Silicon Valley. He's passionate about using smart and simple to use technology to improve people's lives. He launched My Runway initiative and mobile app in the US and China for the goal of marketing online and offline fashion shopping easier. He's also very dedicated in helping out to the community and has been involved in projects that help the bottom billion of poor people and intercultural relations. He holds a PhD in communication, in consumer psychology, and human-computer interaction from Stanford University.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so let's get this discussion started. This question is for any of you who would like to answer. Fashion and technology seem to be increasingly playing off each other. For example, Kate Spade and Juicy Couture are now designing iPhone and Android accessories. Dolce & Gabbana has tablet covers, and Swarovski has a crystal 4 GB USB drive. These items have become an expression of people's personalities and style preferences. Do you see this as a trend, that more designers and tablets will want to get involved, or is it something that just a few key designers will continue to own?
Well, I mean, Levi's, for example, has technology inside their jeans that form-fit to your body, and other brands like Uniqlo also use technology in the clothing for heat monitoring. I could really use a clothing shirt right now, and I'm so hot. But I think that wearable tech's a huge trend. I mean, I know all my friends are very geeky, and they bought like 10 or 5 Pebble watches, and they have like all the different color Google Glass, and they love buying these kinds of products, and geek is chic. And I was just talking to another friend of mine who was saying that Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg are icons of our time who are setting major fashion trends, just sort of like how Valentino was when he was first starting out. So it's interesting to see how that fashion is like flip-flops and hoodies, but then how that's being integrated, that same material, into Fashion Week.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. No? That one working a bit better. I too would like to thank my employer and my mother. No, I mean, I think you raise a really good point. And, my background a long time ago was Coca-Cola, Diageo, and great brands and lots of fun. And I think a lot of those brands, folks have emotional connections to, but when you put on clothing, jeans, apparel, that really, folks really have an emotional connection to, and it's really an outward expression of who they are. And the fact that you're starting to see that now within technology and all the aspects that you just mentioned is amazing. So it's going beyond just clothing and apparel, and now it's pushing really into accessories beyond the typical, accessories that one would think of, handbags, etc. So, I mean, I think if you look back 5 years ago, you never would have thought that. So, I mean, that to me, I think is fascinating that you're starting to see that. It really is just another way that folks can express who they are to everybody else.
Yeah, this one is not working.
I'll trade.
Yeah. So Naima, you have inspired so many fashionistas around the world. And you've been instrumental in changing what being a fashionista means. We would love to hear your thoughts on how the definition of fashion is changing, particularly in relation to advances in technology. So kind of what Sarah was talking about, but I would like to hear your perspective.
I think that a lot of people who are involved in the forefront of fashion, or the face of fashion, I should say, myself being a model, I've kind of been doing that for a while, developed it as my career, have taken on the responsibilities of really not just inspiring people on a global basis, but connecting with them and using fashion as a platform in order to do that. It's something that, like you said, that everyone does every single day of their lives. You wake up and you're like, what shirt am I gonna put on? Now what jeans? All right, let me build my outfit around these shoes. Things that we really love and that are staples within our homes and our closets and our lives, and how we choose to express ourselves. And it's something as almost necessary as food is for us. And I don't want to come across as like that, like sounding like shallow, but it's a necessity. Clothing is a necessity. And within that, it's an expression. So it's a really beautiful way to be able to connect with people. And I feel like what technology is doing is facilitating that. We can actually connect with people on the other side of the planet using a very simple app or blog or website, a new platform that's being developed within the technology basis to kind of combine the two with the basis of connecting with people through self-expression.
Yeah, definitely. Sarah, what are your thoughts from the opposite angle? Do you see technology changing in relation to changes in fashion or the pop culture?
Technology is always changing, and pop culture is always changing. I think that technology creates a need for brands and models or anyone in the fashion industry to adapt to that. So Naima knows tons about that. She has a book and a blog and is publishing as a publisher, and a lot of brands are doing that too. And they're starting to create content and market their brand in unique, different, alternative ways. So whether that's an experience, a contest like what we're doing on Twitter today with Tory Burch, or just adapting to media, social media, getting on those platforms the minute that they launch, securing your name, building those followers, building relationships, getting investments into those companies. I know a lot of fashion brands are now starting to invest in fashion apps, and also bringing on a team of bloggers, promoting the app in an organic way that's organized. And I mean, I've worked with tons of brands where I've been able to work on campaigns with agencies in Madison Avenue and sell out product before it even hits the consumers. And that's because we're able to use these kinds of technologies to get to know the customers more than they even know themselves. So they're like, oh, you read my mind. And they're having that relationship with the brand, and it's like kind of like a person, because now with Twitter, brands are tweeting, so right, you have a person that you are interfacing with. And that's just been accelerating so fast that the brands that don't jump on are missing out a huge opportunity to adapt this kind of technology and grow and learn along the way. So it's not just like pushing, hey, buy this, buy this. It's like listening and customer service and engaging with real people.
Tying into the conversation, we're becoming an increasingly app-focused society. So using apps for everything from accomplishing daily tasks to entertainment to indulging in our favorite hobbies like travel or shopping. Tell us, how do you guys use fashion apps?
I think I'll take that one. It's my
Is that one okay? As you mentioned, app focus is rampant these days, and we are using apps so much more. It's really a convenience thing. So for me personally, being one of those busy people like we all are and multitasking and just going 100 miles an hour, I don't have time to take time out of my day to accomplish tasks like going shopping, getting that dress for the big occasion, or my favorite black pumps wore out, I need a replacement. These are all things now that can be accomplished via apps. So I use apps for a convenience factor to really help me multitask and to make the most out of every minute. It's like a personal assistant I can take with me and really accomplish things on the go.
Paul, do you use any apps?
I do. I'm not sure if this is working now. But yes, yeah, absolutely I do. And they're not fashion apps, although I do like My Runway. But I think there's a component to it in terms of, and I think the convenience factor is huge. And what we start to see out in the marketplace more and more when you start talking about younger consumers, millennials, et cetera, whatever you want to call them, is they are more comfortable using their phone to gain information than they are actually talking to a store associate, which is phenomenal. And if you look at all the consumer research, it says the same thing. They're like, yeah, it's nice to have it there, but I'd rather just pick up my phone and find out the information. So, and I think part of that is that's just second nature to them. They're extremely comfortable with it. I think the other component to it is you have retailers out there who do a fantastic job of visual merchandising and things of that nature, but on the service side, a little bit less so. So, I think you find both, you have consumers who just want to do it on their own because they're comfortable with it, and I think to some extent that marketplace has also set that expectation. And then I think when you look at someone like a Nordstrom, I think they deliver a great balance of the two, right? Of service, it's there, but in terms of integration and Outlook and things like that, they do a great job across all those platforms.
Ooh, I have something to add. On that note, I was on that note of thinking about the consumer, the person at home who's like looking for something special to purchase for themselves, and how they're not necessarily always comfortable in approaching a sales associate in the store location. I feel what fashion apps and technology inside of fashion is doing is really creating a platform for high-end fashion to become more accessible. Like before, I feel like, and I kind of feel this related in my life very much so with what America's Next Top Model did for the world of fashion to be integrated into pop culture. Before, there was like the world of fashion only
fashionistas were involved in that. But now, like, young people all over the world are like fierce and fashionistas and smizing, and you know, and with that, fashion apps and technology are allowing brands like Lanvin or Givenchy to actually become household names. They're not just names being spoken in high-end retail and people who can afford to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a dress. You know, like, people are looking at it as something that is luxurious and something that's chic, something to aspire to feel luxurious and to express that within their lives. And I think what's really cool about My Runway is that it integrates those high fashion, those high-end brands with also brands that are very affordable, all in this very like seamless and chic, very personable experience where you don't have to go in and talk to the sales associate and I don't know anything about style, but I want to get something nice, you know, it's all right there in front of you. So I think that's a really important thing that technology is offering for fashion.
To write on that, can everyone hear me? The microphone, okay, it works now. To write on that power of information in the mobile apps in the hands of the consumers. So actually there's a phenomena that is resonating across my fellow panelists is what I call social participation and inspiration. So I think that what is happening really in the last couple of years, you can almost every day you wake up, you hear another fashion app, you know, showing on our mobile phone app market. Is really are still around social participation and inspiration. Now, average consumers using their phone, the snap picture of themselves, you know, in their home or on the street, then they become a participatory player in the what used to be owned by models and celebrities, right? So then they get inspiration from each other. Probably a lot of you who are in the audience use one app or the other. They are looking at what other people bought, what other people are wearing. So I see more and more apps probably will still keep coming around the phenomena of a social inspiration and participation. But then me, because I personally, I feel as a man, I'm not well served by fashion apps yet. So I recommend in 6 months we should have another panel just focused on fashion apps for men. I do use My Runway personally, but mostly for finding out where the store is and finding products to buy for my sisters or my female friends. I recommend to my female colleagues in my team. But then, mostly as an app creator, I do observe in the last few years, both in not only in our country, US, but also in China, this whole social participation and inspiration is happening more and more. But as an app creator, as a product innovator, we are not satisfied with what's happening now. And my practice and my training is for us to look at what is not well met, what is not well addressed now, and what way we should look next. I will start by saying what I found is there is actually a pain point among many average consumers, many of the female consumers who use the app. They see something maybe Naima is wearing, maybe Stephanie is wearing, or so and so their friend is wearing. Often there is a recurring pain point is like, oh, what's that product? Where can I buy it? Yeah. How much it costs, right? So, and I found from our research is one of the person who likes to blog the shows on like Twitter or other very similar ones or specific about fashion, they're getting very tired of being asked this question. Some people, or broadly speaking, like people who post these things will say, stop asking me where I bought this piece. So I will stop here by categorizing that issue as there's a gap between social inspiration and shoppability.
And location's important as well. That's one thing that we haven't talked about. And again, Levi's is great at that because different, and also McDonald's, I know it's not a fashion brand, but from a brand perspective, looking at each community individually, technology connects us and it connects community. And so if you can have technology that tells you where something is nearby, like My Runway does that, and find out local designers or find out things that are happening within your community, then you can easily go buy that product because it's like 2 blocks away, but you wouldn't have known about it if you didn't get that location ping. And then also, everyone seems to have their own style, but it changes, right? Like based on what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So being able to communicate that, like on Facebook, they ask you how you're feeling. That's just one step there. And the trend will be that your apps already know how you're feeling, and they are so personal. They know everything about you before you know it, and so they'll be able to make recommendations to you. So that'll be nice to have. And then also, okay, UI and UX is really important. Like, I am so fast on my apps when I'm shopping that it could be like as quick as a color recognition. So if I know I'm shopping for a red t-shirt, that I'll just scroll through so quickly that if I see something red, I'll stop and I'll go back up. But it's a very fast process, and I'm constantly shopping on my phone. I mean, I probably shop on my phone 2 times a day.
I'm doing it right now.
I'm shopping right now.
So Paul, given the trends in fashion and technology that Sarah just talked about, what would you say are some of the most successful ways Levi's or any of the brands you worked on previously are engaging with consumers via technology?
Well, I think it's probably a few things. I think, you know, and we've all touched upon this around the consumer is, at the end of the day, the consumer is going to tell you what to do. And they're going to tell you whether you're doing something right or whether you're doing something wrong. And, you know, this day and age, and I just had a conversation with someone about this a couple days ago, and they said, you know, I'm launching my marketing campaign, you know, in 5 cities in the US, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I said, well, you know, you know, your marketing campaign's, you know, not just in the US anymore in those 5 cities, it's going to be around the world if it's good. I'm like, whether you like it or not, your marketing and your brand is global overnight. Especially when you start looking at consumers who use mobile and use apps. The younger they are, you know, these guys and these girls, they are in San Francisco one day, they're in New York on Saturday night, and then they are in Shanghai for business on Monday. So, you know, I think the brands that do a great job of it, Levi's included, I think they're starting to do a better job of not just the functional aspect of the apps and the technology and everything that it can do, but there's also a strategy and a thought process behind it that says, my brand is global, my products are global. You know, someone's using their phone on the streets in New York to find where to find that pair of jeans or that blouse or that Tory Burch bag. Oh, and guess what? You know, they're in London 24 hours later and they're still playing on the same app, and they want to know still where they can buy that in London. And if you can't deliver that, they're going to walk away. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of brands that do that well. I think Levi's included. I think Tory Burch, and there are others in that sphere that do a great job of it. And you're starting to see other brands kind of, you know, more kind of lower to mid-tier brands embracing that, and it's making a huge difference, not just from a sales perspective and a consumer engagement perspective, but I think it's also shifting how consumers perceive their brands as well. So, I mean, I think somebody else mentioned, you know, within My Runway, you have everything from premium brands to kind of more value-based brands. And that's great that you can see that kind of in that marketplace on your phone. And I would recommend the guys app be called My Runway. Trademark that.
So Paul, have you, as part of your consumer research, have you learned about your consumers through the apps in particular, or have you used apps as part of your consumer research?
Yeah, I think it's both. So through the apps, through mobile experience, and just consumer research in general, you see a lot in terms of how consumers are using them. And you know, it is predominantly in a couple of areas. So one is most certainly the ability to shop. I'm out on the street, I want to buy it. Where's the closest store? So it's a convenience factor, absolutely. Not rocket science by any means. I think the other thing that you're really starting to see, and we see in everyone else in the marketplace is saying, is that consumers, you know, mobile's a really interesting area. So I heard some crazy statistic that in Kenya, 65% of GDP in Kenya is done through their phone, which is an amazing statistic. And then you kind of compare that to the US, we're obviously way, way behind that. And there's a multitude of reasons as to why, but what you start to see in the US is, purchasing through your phone is gradually increasing, actually fairly dramatic rates. But consumers are more often than not using their phone to find product, consumer research, to learn more about the product, to find a store, and really kind of as a convenience factor in the information. So those are really, they're really using it as a resource right now. And then, obviously the commerce is starting to grow and will continue to grow, I think, as they get more and more used to that platform.
What are some of the successful ways that Levi's has connected to consumers through apps, if they have at all?
I think it's probably through, there's a few ways in terms of apps and mobile as well. And it is basic things, right? It is just being able to give the consumer what they're looking for. So, very basic functionality around fit finders, to be able to, within our portfolio, we have a huge range of products across men's and women's. The ability to find the fit that I am looking for is a huge hurdle. So, not just when consumers are in store, but the ability to kind of put that fit finder in someone's hand becomes incredibly valuable. And, that would typically be a one-on-one discussion, which you can do in the Levi's stores, but in some of the other accounts, it's harder to do that. So that fit finder is a key tool. Really basic, really fundamental, but it is back to the earlier conversation, it really is kind of the number one thing that consumers are saying is, help me find what fits and what is going to make me look good.
And have you tried things that haven't really been successful as far as using technology?
I think in general, yes. I mean, there's always things that work and don't work, and the things that don't work more often than not, and I think this goes to a lot of brands out there in the marketplace, is you put something out there and you go, well, why didn't it work? Why didn't the consumer connect with it? Why didn't they use it? And no one asked the fundamental question of, well, does the consumer care? Right? I mean, it's a very basic question, but if the consumer doesn't care, or you're not meeting kind of a functional need or an emotional need, it's not going to work. So at the end of the day, it starts and ends with the consumer. And you need to be able to ask yourself is, what am I doing, and how is it going to benefit the consumer? And there's not always a tangible answer to that question, and that's fine. But you do need to be able to say, oh, it's going to help them find their fit, or it's going to help them find a store, or it's going to give them this information. And you're like, okay, that is valuable.
Stephanie, we've heard that engaging niche bloggers is a great way to get a new app in front of a target audience. As a blogger, what makes you want to cover an app? What makes you excited to use an app or recommend it to your followers?
That's a great question because reaching out to niche bloggers has become such a powerful marketing vehicle. Bloggers are now inundated with pitches for all sorts of new things every day. So when it comes to things like apps, we may hear about 12 different social shopping apps in a month. What I look for is that one special quality about that app that sets it apart from others, that one value add that my readers can't get anywhere else. And the thing that really intrigued me about the My Runway app in particular was the connection to SAP. Working in technology in my day job, I instantly recognized the name. SAP powers the behind the scenes of how fulfillment happens in terms of ordering and keeping track of inventory. And I was like, wow, if SAP is creating an app, they're like right in with all of the retailers. So what they're going to be able to offer my readers in this app is going to be totally different than the app maker whose closest connection to the retailer is the affiliate manager. It's a whole different experience. So it's that one little intangible that I can tell my readers about that they're going to get with this particular app that they're not going to get somewhere else. And that's really what I look for.
Could you tell us about your most, a pitch that really caught you that you wanted, you're like, okay, that's how I want to be pitched at, and one that you just kind of like, where did you get your marketing degree? Don't approach me like this.
This is actually one of my favorite topics when I talk to people about working with bloggers. Bloggers are unique individuals because they're creating an experience for their readers that's very personal and very individualized. So we want to know that you, marketer, you PR person who's pitching us, that you understand what we're doing. You get that, I have a particular perspective, I'm reaching out to a particular audience. I want to know that you feel that. So the most successful pitches for me are the ones that really personalize the value proposition. This product, this service, this app is going to be great for your readers because, and they've really taken the time to understand who my readers are and who I am. In terms of the pitches that kind of fall flat, my favorite ones are the ones who don't realize that technology is different than print. So I love the pitches that are, okay, here's this great new thing we're gonna come out with next season, but it's embargoed for 6 months. I don't want your embargoed press release. I'm writing a blog post tonight. So give me something I can write about tonight. Don't think I'm Vogue. Love Vogue, but they have a 3-month lead time. I don't. So remember that technology moves fast, and anyone who works in technology, they're dealing with very different constraints.
Sarah, what have you seen retailers try and be successful with so far? And where do you see room for improvement? Without hurting Paul's feelings here.
Like with their apps, or
no, with what are they doing to connect to consumers that's working, and what really needs to be improved?
okay. And I can't mention Levi's again.
Oh, sure.
Or
Just be mindful of his feelings.
Okay, well, I'm really into the Makers program. I think it's really cool. I checked out the new store on Market. Congratulations. And I love they have sewing machines there because people want to personalize their stuff. I mean, how many fashion bloggers or stylists do we have in the audience here today? Okay, so we got some of you guys. And do you guys enjoy sort of like personalizing your own stuff? Like, will you sort of wake up in the morning, you're putting together your outfit, maybe sew something on your headband, or add an extra piece of flair to your jacket, like a badge or something that is just uniquely you. I'm sure you do that stuff all the time. So I'm starting to see a lot of that coming out, where retailers are wanting to connect locally to their customers and give them that unique opportunity that's uniquely them, so they have a voice, because then they want to share that, they want to post that, and they want to connect in the store. Like, I love going to stores to post to my Instagram and trying on different looks and live casting. Like, okay, so I was one of the first live casters, which meant I strapped a camera to my head. Didn't look that good, right? I mean, who was doing it? The cameras were pretty big back then. And, I was going to parties because I was under the drinking age and no one would let me in. So, like, Nick Denton from Gawker Media calls me up and he's like, hey, I need you to work for me because you're doing this weird thing and I need that. And it was very bizarre, but then I went to New York City and all of a sudden this geek girl who was very nerdy in my style ended up on Madison Avenue, and I'm interfacing with brands and they're all wanting to talk to me, and I needed to look good. I was the first person to live stream Fashion Week, and I had to look good because I met Anna Wintour, so I was like, okay, I gotta pull it together. So I put it on my headband and I put a little flower thing around it and I put the webcam in a flower, and I was like, Anna, what do you think of my headband? I was like, it's a camera, and it's going inside this purse I have. And I was like, you see Paris Hilton rocking this? I just saw Nikki. And she was like, she stopped, and everyone was trying to get her attention, and she looked at me, and she was like, interesting. And she just paused for like a good 3 seconds, and then walked away. But it was that moment where I knew, okay, I'm not a freak. This could be something that everyone is doing really soon. And lo and behold, I'm being recruited by fashion brands to start my own line and do this and that. And it's very interesting to see how the geeks are chic and how tech is cool all of a sudden. But still,